This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Pittsburgh to Scranton, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined for this segment of Behind the Headlines by our president, Ed Arnold. Ed, welcome to the show.
Charlie, good to see you.
Why, Ed, we have a interesting situation in Pennsylvania where we have a mythical town, and that town is Braddock, Pennsylvania. It almost has taken on the characteristics of Brigadoon, that the real Brigadoon appears every 100 years. We don't know what the characteristics of the real Braddock are, but they could tell us something about our new senator-elect. And certainly the characteristics of Braddock played a huge role in this last senatorial campaign, the most expensive midterm election in the country, Ed. So just recently, you and I and one of our associates from Susquehanna traveled to Braddock to see for ourselves. And it is sort of a capsulation of what Billy Joel sang about in his song about Allentown, that Braddock could be a representation of what's happened across the northeastern part of the United States to so many industrial towns. Were you surprised by
what I was surprised partly
saw?
is that, first of all, it was definitely a one-company town, which was U.S. Steel, which had been Carnegie Steel originally. And overall, what is surprising is they are still making steel there. So really, part of the statement has made a lot of our industrial jobs have been lost because of automation. They now make more steel in an hour than they used to make in 24 hours there because of the super continuous slab process. They are still making steel. Instead of employing 20,000 people, they maybe now are employing 2,000.
Mm-hmm. It's called continuous casting.
Yes.
And that's what they use under Carnegie, apparently. At the end of the 19th century, there were 20,000 employees in this steel plant. Now U.S. Steel has 2,000, but despite the reduction in the employee complement, it seems to be very dynamic and is producing a lot of steel for the United States. But it doesn't seem to be connected to the town. There are fences up, and the most of the workers come in and they leave, and they have little, if any, interaction with Braddock.
Well, I think one of the statements we learned was downtown Braddock had maybe up to 100 stores at one time, and they went through two phases. Number one, a small shopping center located outside the town, and pretty much everybody moved to that small shopping center. Ironically, now there was a bigger shopping center, maybe 15 miles away or more, and all that shopping center has actually been torn down, so there's been 3 generations. But the thing is, this is what's happened to our communities. We have put our shopping, which is the #1 industry in America, to larger and larger shopping centers, closed the downtown. Also, of course, with no jobs, you were talking about the wealth of the area. There's churches are empty. There's a lot of things. It's a deteriorating town, and unfortunately, this is a picture of industrial America.
Well, it seems as if perhaps that maybe our senator-elect was elected on false pretenses. It would seem that during the election, all sorts of news media should have come to Braddock to check it out, see what has been done and what his administration did there. When we went and we looked, first of all, I could only find a record on the internet of 2 different news operations going there and checking it out prior to the election. And they came out with very disappointing reports for Braddock's economic future. It seems that the senator-elect was not being straight with us on
Well,
what was
basically,
happening
this
in
is what's so
Braddock.
sad is the fact that our news media doesn't cover the facts. They didn't bother to look at it. Braddock is a failed city. He was the mayor for 10 years, and it's continued to be a failed city. He did some good, say, everybody should love everybody, and this little happy, and put some park benches. But basically, he did nothing for the town. If anything, he continued to deteriorate and lost even more population while he was mayor. So basically, his idea that he will bring jobs to Pennsylvania or do anything creative, he did nothing for Braddock, but the news media didn't bother to cover it. It was a dying city when he got there, and it's still a dying city, and he has absolutely done nothing to reverse it.
It's interesting. He is born in West Reading and was raised in York, Pennsylvania, along with our current governor, interestingly enough. So the governor and lieutenant governor both grew up in York before he moved to Braddock. You find that he did buy an old car dealership that was out of business from his sister for $1, and they put in a first-class restaurant in the bottom floor called Superior Motors. The problem with Superior Motors, it lasted 5 years. By the way, he was mayor for 13 years, actually. We find that Braddock is known for, we went to see what else there is in Braddock other than U.S. Steel. Interestingly enough, the most important or notable person from Braddock turns out to be Lauren Twees. Lauren Twees, remember Julie McCoy from the Love Boat TV show?
Yeah.
She was the cruise director. She is listed as the most notable person from Braddock. And then Fetterman's wife is listed as the second most
Well,
notable
the other
person.
thing you should talk about really was the first Carnegie Library was built there, except
Yes.
this was not a library, it was a giant community center. There, I don't know if you're going to show the pictures, but there was 1,100 people auditorium. There's a swimming pool. It is giant building, very large. And right now, Fetterman, I'm sure, got state or federal money because they're going to rebuild the whole thing at a tremendous cost, which really what they need in that town is not a new community center. They already have one. They took an old church and turned it into a community center because there's many closed up churches, obviously, because it was been a large city at one time, or reasonable sized city. That so basically he has really did nothing, and he's totally, obviously he is a phony, but of course our news media won't report that.
Well, Braddock is known for U.S. Steel and for Andrew Carnegie, for the Battle of Monongahela, where General Edward Braddock was killed, and George Washington managed to create some order among the routed British troops, and this represents the first military action that leads to General Washington's career as commander of our revolutionary forces and as president. So all that comes together. There's a little museum that we saw there dedicated to the Battle of Monongahela, and it actually has the, remember seeing the journal of George Washington it has there, his own autobiography of 12 pages accounting for the battle. And also in the margin, he makes notes about the Constitutional Convention, and then a little bit later about his own presidential administration. So that's interesting that Braddock has those kind of historical roots. But then, as you said, the next maybe notable thing is Andrew Carnegie locates the first Carnegie Library in Braddock. And it is a magnificent facility. All the steel workers could go into it through a tunnel that went under the road from the steelworks into the library. And down in the basement of the library, as you were saying, there was a shower room, there was a steam room, there was a swimming pool, a room to play pool, there was a duck pin bowling alley, and then the workers could go upstairs and read in the library. It was a great community center, Ed. We don't have those types of community centers. I think now everybody's focused on their own cell phone, aren't they?
No, it's a sad city. There's nothing, or town. It's actually only 1,700 people now.
Yes.
And really, it's just There's nothing been built there for the last 50 years. Probably all the buildings look very, very old. There's a few government, I think, low-cost housing or things like that. But basically, there's no sign, except for a few love your neighbor and things like that, that he did for the town at all, despite the fact that he was mayor for a long period of time. And when you talk to people, there's a few of them that diehard Democrats say he was a wonderful person, and other people say he did nothing. The town actually was deteriorated more under his leadership, or lack thereof.
Well, since the town only has 1,700 people and is closely integrated with West Braddock and with Mifflin, this, in your mind, makes the case in Pennsylvania for more government integration, doesn't it?
Yeah, these towns should be merged together. Not that that's going to make a giant saving, but in fact, if you have 3 dying small towns, at least merge them all together and make one. They did do one thing. They used to have 3 high schools. They merged them into one high school now. And there actually is a 4th town, Swiss, that is right down the road too. And they are all the same way. They were dependent on the steel industry. That's where the employment, and they all deteriorated badly. Though Braddock appears to have deteriorated the most.
Yeah. Apparently, we learned from talking with some of the residents that football played a large role in the heritage of the area, and their local high school football teams actually had 3 football teams that did exceedingly well. One had won, 56 games in a row.
Yes, I think it was a record in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's
and we actually
amazing.
met one of the football players.
Yes, we
actually,
did.
He happened to be at the restaurant with there, and he was very proud of and he was a veteran. He had served in the Vietnam War and so on. But that was their past glory.
Proud of his school and proud of Braddock. And we find that the mayor, maybe some of the influence that he might have wielded in Harrisburg would bring some of that money to help rebuild part of the library. But his wife, of course, used some of his salary as mayor to put small little signs around town saying smiles are good, hugs are good. And we can hope that better days come for Braddock in the near future, can't we?
But it's all basically nice little slogans, no material substance was done.
Well, we'll try to stay on top of the news and continue to bring you the most important news in Pennsylvania. We'll see you on this upcoming segment of the Arnold Report following this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, we are going to have an Arnold Report with Mr. Ed Arnold, the president of Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Good to see you,
It's
Charlie.
good to have another Arnold Report. We have questions that have come in. Many of them have focused on the cybercurrency crisis brought along by FTX. We'll get to that at the end of this segment. But we have some other situations that people are concerned about in the area of finance and investment as well. One has somewhat resolved itself at this point because it was about the rail strike. One of our viewers has written in and said that the president told us that the railroads union negotiations were all settled. Now it appears as if there could be a strike. What will the effect to the economy be if such a strike does occur? What can investors do to protect ourselves? So since this has been settled by Congress, I guess the question would remain, what is the influence that rail has on our economy, and how can investors invest in rail?
Well, first of all, there are obviously a lot of public rail companies if you want to invest. The rail companies are extremely profitable because pretty much they're all monopolies now. There's been consolidation, and so there very is little competition. Secondly, the importance of rail continues to be less and less. It is basically a bulk carrier. Also, it has unit trains of containers, which of course bring the freight from the Far East to the East. But overall, that rail, they've been treated always. Before we had Social Security, we had the Rail Retirement Act. They actually passed it first. They have one of the best pensions, except for working for the government, because they have a special pension that is cost of living adjusted. They do contribute somewhat to it, but not that much. And in their health plans also very, very strong. The rail employees have it very good, plus the amount of days off, they're way greater than the average industry in this country. So this idea that they had to have more time off and so on, yes, they have to operate 24/7, so yes, they do have different shifts, but I'm sure they're planned ahead. This idea that they, with all the time they have off, and they got 5 more personal days, which is basically, that was the main thing they were arguing about, I believe, and Congress gave it to them.
Okay. Another viewer has written in to tell us that they have heard recently, repeatedly, that Hershey Foods is a great investment for the long haul. They're not asking you whether or not to invest or not, but what they are asking here, what characteristics does Hershey Food possess that makes it such a sound investment for the long haul?
Well, first of all, they're a very efficient company. They're actually located right in our backyard here, and they have built extremely automated plants. In fact, they're spending another couple $100 million building another, improving the Reese's products, that they continue to concentrate on their core areas. They have continued to grow market share through their concentration. They're just a well-run, very efficient company.
Okay, and that's been true over
many
ages.
years. Yeah, in fact, by the last 2 years, they've done extremely well. Their earnings have really gone up.
Okay. Another viewer writes and asks you that now that the price of real estate is declining, what strategy do you suggest that my family should adopt? Is it better to sell now or hold for the future in an economy that looks bleaker and bleaker in the future?
Well, overall, because this economy looking bleaker is because of inflation. Obviously, hard assets tend to do very well in inflation. So therefore, unless you have some short-range views, if you're talking about the long haul, real estate is still continues to be, it depends what your situation is, what kind of real estate you're talking about, but overall, real estate will continue to be a good investment.
Okay. And by the way, again, if you have questions for Mr. Arnold, we want you to send them in to us. Please send them to the email that's listed at the bottom of the screen. Mr. Arnold welcomes them and looks forward to receiving them. The next question is, what are the economic effects of uncontrolled immigration? Can the United States continue to receive an unlimited number of people from around the world? This person was watching
The answer is it is unsustainable. We are, unless we drastically change, we are basically pretty much deciding we are no longer a country when you have no borders. The people that are coming in are not trying to adopt American culture. They're trying to bring their culture with them, and we are more and more obsessed with making sure they do. So they're really that we are becoming more of a divided nation, and this is not sustainable. So really the future of America at this point is not very bright.
I guess the Heritage Foundation a number of years ago had tried to come up with some economic figures for what immigration costs America, but I don't know that they've updated those in recent memory.
No, and the thing is, they're not talking about the fact that more and more illegals that are coming in now are being subsidized with a massive free education, free this, free that. So we're not only telling people to come, but we're going to take care of you and treat you better than we do our own citizens.
Okay. Well, here's another one right out of the news. Surely the war in Ukraine is affecting our economy and investing opportunities. Will you please outline how the war affects investing currently?
Well, basically, obviously, one of the things of the war is the war stocks, and that they're going to have to replenish, and they're obviously that's a solid, secure business because we continue to have our military complex, and it definitely is going to affect inflation though, because we're printing money like mad, we're giving it to the Ukraine, but we're also stimulating things in this country. The war in Ukraine, therefore, is going to continue to cause inflation because it's going to cause a tremendous demand. And investing would pretty much be in your industrial complex.
Mm-hmm. How is it's affecting Russia as well, and even the Chinese economy, isn't it?
Well, yes, because it's commodities. Again, Russia is an extremely supplier of world commodities, whether it's fertilizer itself or the ingredients of fertilizer, a lot of minerals like nickel, which of course are important for your electric batteries, and of course oil, that are the energy source. So Russia is extremely important to supplying the world with raw materials, and that affects China.
Okay. The next viewer has written in, what are the long-term prospects for Twitter? Can Elon Musk make it profitable? What goods and services does it produce for the American economy?
Well, Twitter, basically, he has now given us back free speech, which we, of course, we know. He's now just released recently. The Democratic Party basically has colluded with Twitter to basically skew the last election because of restricting free speech. The question now is, are they going to attack Musk so hard that he will not be able to have a success out there? Plus, a lot of your woke major corporations in America, since America is a collaboration, the Democratic Party and large corporate, they're pulling their ads out of Twitter. But again, overall, it's being run more efficiently, but obviously its revenue base is advertising, and its advertising base is suffering right now. So, but again, it's not a public company. This is Musk's problem, not ours.
We wonder at what personal cost this has come to Musk, in that yesterday he issued a statement saying that he is not suicidal. He will not sign autographs anymore. He will not go in large crowds anymore. He is concerned about his own security forces, he said. So this is a new chapter.
Well, this is sad because somebody that would go against the Democratic Party, his life is in danger in this country, and that's where we are.
Go against free speech.
Yes.
Yeah. Another question, and this is the last one, leading up to cybercurrency. How long can Disney produce products that do not share the values of the vast majority of its customers? Isn't that why its leadership changed?
Well, basically, the answer is it's going to start to go back to doing products. Its last thing came out with a transgender star, and it's been a total failure. They were going to lose a tremendous amount of money. Their old new management has said his goal is going to be to make money, not to be woke, and therefore Disney is going to go back to hopefully being an entertainment giant and giving us what we are looking for, not trying to indoctrinate us. And I think that's going to happen.
Okay. Well, let's go to cybercurrency now. Let's turn to this the big chapter in last couple of weeks. This viewer has written and say the changes in the cybercurrency world are so many and happening so fast that I cannot keep up with this turmoil. Would you please give us background data on Sam Bankman-Fried, who he is, where did he come from, what are his qualifications to run a major global corporation, and why would savvy investors trust such an unproven individual with their investments?
Well, basically, one thing you got to realize, first of all, he's a smart man. He was educated at Stanford, Harvard, etc. He obviously is a great con man. He understands that greed, and he failed. And he also believes in billions. Everything he did was big, big, big. He basically formed a company. He obviously got it financed with a tremendous amount of money because people, if you go back and look at where his crypto come from, crypto, if you'd invested in crypto in any part of 2020, you're up 10 to 100-fold at the peak. And even now you're still up, and depends on the currency, 10-fold or more. So these people made so much money, and he came along and said, invest. I'm the new crypto. I'm the latest game in town. And therefore, a lot of the people were just basically investing their massive profits, I believe, that they made already off crypto. Crypto is the Wild West, there's no question. The other part, of course, that's very critical, he is a major, actually just about the #1 supporter of the Democratic Party. He's given them in the last couple of years close to $50 million. 1/10 of 1% goes to Republicans. Obviously, therefore, he is untouchable. That's why he's not worried. He will not be prosecuted because he's above the law. He's bought and paid for the Democratic election.
Well, he was the second largest contributor to the Democrats.
And it was almost just about tie. The difference between him and Soros was a small number. He basically was tied for the largest contributor to the Democratic Party. In this last election, it was 40 million. He did over 5 million in the previous election for Biden.
And right now, he is hiding in the Bahamas with a mislaid amount that may be as much as $8 billion.
Well, basically, you say hi. He moved his country to the Bahamas quite a while ago. He's been living in the Bahamas. So really, he's just saying, I'm permanently going to stay there. But actually, in many ways, he can come back because there's no question that he will not be prosecuted because he bought and paid for the Democratic Party.
Well, we'll wait and see. Maybe another administration that might change. We'll see. Well, following up that question, is the FTX fiasco a signal for investors to steer clear of cyber currencies? When will they be safe to invest in again? How could our government regulators have allowed this fiasco to occur?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, because of the politicization of all our organizations, the regulators, #1, there is limited regulation because crypto's moving so fast. And #2, our regulators don't want to because Friedman is above the law. But overall, right now, in my opinion, crypto is still, your blockchain is still the future, and crypto is not going to go away. And so at this point, I wouldn't say you should rush in and buy it, but I don't think you should rush in to sell either.
What would you say to Larry Fink, who is the chairman of BlackRock, who said that he believes that all crypto funds are doomed at this point?
I think he's right in that there's over 1,000 crypto companies. Are there going to be a giant consolidation where a handful are going to succeed? I think so. I don't think they're all going to cease. I just think that 90% of them will fail.
Now, we can end this segment with the quote from Sam Fried himself. He said, he was quoted as saying by Douglas Murray in the New York Post on December the 1st of this year. He is quoted as saying, I feel bad for those who get effed by the fiasco.
He's a great con man.
He certainly has proven to be, hasn't he? Well, we want to thank you very much for being with us today and for the Arnold Report. Send those questions to Mr. Arnold, and we will tackle them in a new edition of the Arnold Report. We'll see you next time.